Morning, everyone. This meeting will obviously be chaired by Chris, and I'll ask him in a minute to open up council prayer and do some introductions. But welcome to Chambers. It is comfy and collegial in nature. This was a building that, in theory, we were about to break ground on a brand new building about now. We are building a new centre, civil defence centre next door, but we thought it prudent, in light of the changes of local government, just to pause that project. And welcome to those online, but Chris, I'll pass over to you.
Kia ora. Koina iwi hiri nei, nā mai haere mai, kai tēnā hui, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora, everybody. Thank you so much for that warm welcome, Mayor Andy. It's a pleasure to be here. It's our first meeting as a shareholders committee in the mighty Rangitikei. I've got the Deputy Mayor Dave Wilson at the end of the table, who's every time I look up, if I get anything wrong, he's going to stare me down. He's already told me that he's outside of the purview of the recording devices, so he will make all sorts of faces at me if I get anything wrong. But it's wonderful, Dave. Thanks for your hospitality too, and to your fellow councillors for the use of this room and to be able to be here in Martin for this meeting. We're going to start with what I love. I sat down here and I see that there is actually a council prayer in English and in Te Reo, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And my Te Reo journey is an exciting one and a varied one and a fairly clumsy one, but I think it's really important and I beg your indulgence if I pronounce anything wrong, but I'm going to do my best in going through the Te Reo karakia. And if I get any of the pronunciation wrong, and I'm going to do the English, I know that it's either one or the other, but I'm so impressed by both of these, I think it's right and proper for us to start with both. So bear with me. I hoa nā mano tēnei mātou nā miho I kunihira I rangitiki. I'm even making voice of it, and I've just been practicing it. I whakahoki atu ana I te reo whakamomiti kia koe. No, actually, can somebody help me with this? I'm gonna make it worse, and I'm gonna be insulting. So how about I can. Thank you.
E hoa o ngā mano tēnei mātou, ngā mema o te kaunihira o Rangitikei. E whakahoki atu ana I te reo whakamoemati ki a koe mō ngā manaakitanga I whiwhi nei mātou I roto I ngā mahi pai o tēnei rohe. Manaakitia hoki mātou I roto I ngā take kei runga I te tepu I roto I tēnei o ngā hoa. You want to carry on?
Yeah.
O tēnei.
O te rā e hio o ngā mano homia te kaha te māramatanga me te rangimari kia mātou nā kia kunihira nā tangata o tēnei rohi me nā iwi katoa kia raro I o mātou aro nō reira ko te manako ki mahi tahi mātou I raro I te ko tahitanga I rātou I tō noa tapu. Thank you. I'm going to take a photo of that. I'm going to learn that by heart. So the next time we have a meeting here, I'm going to be able to recite that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Council prayer. Almighty God, as members of the Rangitikei District Council, we give thanks for all the good things of our district and advantages we enjoy. We pray that you will give us wisdom and guidance as we conduct the affairs of this meeting. We pray for all the communities and districts we represent. Help us to be fair and honest in our discussions, and help us to work together in unity for the welfare of all your people. Amen. Kia ora. Thank you, everybody.
Just for everybody's knowledge, in terms of the Rangitikei.
Thanks, Andy. We've got a couple of relatively large agenda items today. The principal one being the statement of expectation, and we have some feedback from the board that they would like us to consider. But first off, having started with karakia, apologies. We have an apology for lateness from Hayden. Is there any other apologies for the meeting that we haven't received at the moment? No, thank you. We don't have any notification of additional items. Declarations of interest, if any. Does anyone have any declarations of interest that pertain to today's meeting in particular, separate to those that might have been signalled by any members of the committee previously? Thank you. Public comment. Kia ora, members of the public tuning in perhaps online. It's being recorded, so if you're not able to join us in real time, then thank you for taking the opportunity to look at the recording. We very much appreciate it. Public engagement and accountability is very important to us. We're here as stewards and to create an environment of intergenerational accountability. We take our roles incredibly serious, and Central District's Water, we are committed to be one, if not the best, provision of water services to our diverse and geographically spread community that we represent, as was highlighted in both the English and Te Reo karakias. Confirmation of the minutes. Could I ask everybody to turn to the minutes of the part one of the meeting of the 26th of June 2026? Do I have, I will move those as being a true and accurate record. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Mayor Smith. But for terms of accuracy from those minutes of part one of the meeting of the 26th of June, page 7, do I have any corrections? Page 8, and just a little bit on page 9. Thank you. Any discussion of those? All those in favour of these being true and accurate records, say aye. Aye. Thank you. Carried. Appreciate that. MOU discussion. This is really here as some background information. I will open it up for any discussion, but there is no, we have that as a... Danielle. Oh, of course, Danielle. Sorry, I just saw your hand.
No, aroha mai, tēnā koutou katoa, everybody. Hannah, can you just resend me the link for the papers? I text you, but you must have your phone off.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle. So I've got a memo there that's dated the 14th of August. I am deeply indebted to the spirit of goodwill and trust and support that each member of this committee has provided both me, but also each other. We met, a smaller group of us met on the Friday, the 7th of August, from which the memo that you have in front of you is a summary. It comes with a recommendation. Is that for formal moving, that recommendation?
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, so it is for formal moving. It comes with a recommendation that the committee note the MOU update from the independent chair. Within that, before I open it up for any questions and discussion, you'll note that if I could take you to page 14 of the meeting agenda documents, under item 4, it's conclusions and recommendations. And conclusion 4.1, but no all-encompassing MOU we believe is necessary. Well, that was the broad conclusion, no formal resolution, but a broad conclusion from that smaller group of the committee informal meeting on the Friday the 7th of August. And 2, that they're actually distilled from the work that had been completed and from the apparent aims, I'll use the word aims rather than purposes of the MOU, but that there were 2 distinct work streams. The first was a bilateral relationship between Tapuaho and Central District's Water, the company. And it was acknowledged that the company will have a number of different relationships undoubtedly, and some of those might be framed in a more formal agreement. I'm using my words very particularly, but that it was felt in the recommendation here today to this committee was that was actually a matter for Central District's Water to be able to pursue whatever agreements it feels with its with any group that it feels fit, and that we would have ultimately as a committee oversight of that through the reporting mechanisms. So that was the first. The second was that the working group acknowledged that we live in changing times, and not only is there legislation that is on the brink of being passed and coming into force that might remove voting rights for non-elected members potentially of this committee, but there's also a lot going on around amalgamation, the notion of fast tracking and unitary authorities and so on and so forth, that might mean that at some period of time this committee will need to have a look at its relationship, its core relationship and constitutional documents. And so the recommendation there is that this committee keep a watching brief on those, and if at any time even a subcommittee or a working group needs to be formally established, that we would tackle that as and when is required. We'll be seeking significant advice on the implications of any legislative change and what that might mean for us, and that conversation, the channels of conversation remain open. So 4.3, it was felt that with the issue of the MOU, which we acknowledge had caused quite some confusion as to necessarily where it had come from and what its aims or purposes were, its connection with the SOU, all being relevant and legitimate and honest confusion, but confusion nonetheless. But ultimately that working group had formed the view, which forms the basis of the recommendation here today, that the path ahead for discussing and passing the SOE, the Statement of Expectation, was now clear and unencumbered by the uncertainty regarding any MOU. So there might be an agreement between Central District's Waters and Tapuaho, but that not be in the form of an MOU that concerns all five parties or the four parties of the committee and Central District's Water. That would be a bilateral, and that any terms of constitutional changes that might be needed as a result of legislative reform or moves within government policy, that we would keep a watching brief in relation to that. So there is I move, before opening it up to the floor, that the committee notes the MOU update from the independent chair, that there is no necessary approval, but I suppose that goes implicitly hand in hand. Do I have a seconder for the moving of that recommendation before I open it up to discussion? Thank you, Mayor Andy. I open up to the floor for discussion. Yes, mate.
So we do have to move the SOE though, don't we?
Yeah.
This is separate to the SOE.
Oh, okay.
So this is actually providing what I believe is some really helpful clarification as to the relationship between the MOU and the SOU, from which there was quite some confusion. MOU and SOE. There was some confusion coming into this meeting, and what we're saying here is that clarity is being provided that the two are not, and in fact there is no pathway forward for an MOU, and that there is no relationship, and we're free and unencumbered to now discuss and potentially pass the SOE.
Okay, so really all we're doing here is talking to item 7, which is really accepting the document from Steve Murray. So probably
No, we've not even got to the SOE yet. This is purely an update on the MOU.
Okay, and sorry, the document from you.
Document from me.
Yeah. Clear as mud, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Hopefully I didn't add more confusion to that, Grant. Sam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, look, just on behalf of Horowhenua District Council, our instructions are to support the pragmatic proposed way forward, and to agree to essentially the uncoupling of the SOE and the MOU. So we're happy to support the recommendations outlined in the paper. I will note that that wasn't necessarily a unanimous decision around our or direction around our table, and there was some frustration, but in the interest of moving forward and keeping the momentum, there was a majority support to adopt that pragmatic position. So that's where we sit.
Thank you, Sam.
I'd just like to thank you for your concerns and the pragmatic approach taken. I understand.
Thank you, Mayor Andy. Any other discussion? Okay.
Through you, Chair, I'd just like to say that your summation of the meeting held on the 7th is accurate, and I believe it's captured in the document for us. So happy to support.
Thank you, Dave. Danielle?
Kia ora anō. Just on behalf of Ngā Tapawai, I just want to acknowledge the spirit of the conversation that did happen last Friday. And where we all landed to. I just think it's a further reflection of the trust and the relationship that is growing between everybody, and that we work through these issues in a really respectful and honourable way, and we lead to conclusions that are going to be good for the whole of our community at the end. Ngā mihi.
Thank you. Any other discussion? It's moved. It's been seconded. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. That clears the way for us to discuss item 8, which is my paper on the adoption of the Statement of Expectations, and also attached to that paper is attachment 1, which is the letter from Chair of the Board, Steve Mahari, and then a track change copy of the document itself also is attachment 1. So you can see the track changes. I think it's then followed by appendix 2, which is the rationale for suggested amendments as to the feedback we've received from the board, and then straight after that is a clean version that we're discussing. The way that the recommendations are worded is that it takes the clean version that has all of the proposed amendments within it. There are different ways in which we could start this discussion. Katie, I note that immediately before we started, we had a quick discussion about, you had a proposal about how we might, I've got a way, but I'm very open to your suggestion as how you think it might be profitable for us to enter this discussion. Do you want to give us a quick brief of that?
Absolutely, I can do that. I had thought that I thought the board's comments were largely very helpful and clarified a lot of things, but I also thought that the staff analysis that came to us was very helpful in assessing those. And so I had thought that it could be an efficient way for us to agree to adopt the staff's recommendations with a few exceptions, which PNCC had wanted to put up, and then would welcome any other exceptions that our partners wanted to put up too. But that I thought would be a catch-all of incorporating what the board had suggested and what staff had recommended, noting some of the staff recommendations had proposed some additional wording to clarify what the board had said or to make it more appropriate, and had also said that some of the board's suggestions were perhaps not quite achieving what they wanted to achieve. So I thought that might be an efficient way to go through the proposed changes.
It does sound a good way. And perhaps for clarity, if I can just, when you say the staff proposals, are you talking attachment 3 on page
I am, yes.
page 52 of the which is in a it's landscape
Yes, that's right.
documents, and it's in a form of a table, and it's got the relevant sections starting with section 3, 4, 6, and so on and so forth. It's got then the board comment request, it's got the reasons provided, the officer commentary, and then the recommendations for a way forward.
That's right. So it's that final column that I'm looking to adopt with exceptions.
Okay, I think that's a good way forward. What I will say is that there is actually a lot of sort of detail that I think that we would say absolutely yes to, and it's not going to be a problem. The 3 main things that I'd like us to focus on are the 3 things that are brought to our particular attention by Steve Mahari in his letter, and they relate to the term of the SOE, which actually we're all relatively in the hands of the lawyers here, and we've got some legal advice as to 10-year term and when on earth that starts and when on earth that finishes, but also and particularly around that issue is the frequency of the review, and I've got some comments to make on that, but that's probably item number one. The second item relates to the streamlining, I'll use that word, of the recommendation from the board as to the 6 monthly, not the performance provisions that within the SOE we've asked the board to come back to us with performance structure for key result areas, but the 6 monthly reports that we're asking of the board and of the company to report back to us. You will remember that in our proposal to the board, the statement of expectation, we went into quite significant detail, and they've come back and I think helpfully have sharpened a bit of the pencil on that and made some recommendations about how that might be streamlined. The third relates to clause or section 36, which is a provision and a suggested reframing of the words relating to the relationship between CDW and mana whenua. And so those are the three that I think stand out. The rest of them, I won't say are also RANs because they're important, but I'm mindful that that's where I'm anticipating and how I will chair the meeting to have the main element of focus, notwithstanding the fact that you might have comments to do with, I don't want to get bogged down on too much on the rest of it. So, we okay, ladies and gentlemen, with that way forward? If we're all on page 52 of the booklet, which is item 8, attachment 3, which I can't see what you are looking at necessarily, but is that screen that everyone can see? Okay. So,
Just a question, Mr. Chair, in terms of process here.
yes.
So hopefully we're in a position that we're on agreement and being able to effectively sign. But because there have been changes put in place or suggested by the board, does this then have to go back to the board for final agreement before we can sign off?
The board has been great question, Andy. The board has been very frank with me, and that is that they have been mightily impressed by the spirit and the conciseness of which this SOE has been put together. So they, as is echoed in Steve's letter, they have said that these are recommendations or suggestions by the board, and that ultimately, if we were to say no to all of them, that they would be able to live with it and work within the framing of the SOE as the draft that we gave them prior to them making suggestions. So I lead with that with a little bit of trepidation, because I do think that there is some real benefit and there's some help in the recommendations and suggestions that I've made. But what I've taken from that is that we do not need to go back. If from approving it today, we can take it that it's approved for going forward for signing by both parties. And I assume that I would sign it as the representative of the committee, and it would be signed by the or it might even be by the CEOs. Whatever the pragmatics of that is then that I'm. Of course, yeah, Chris.
Chris Tybee, Chief Executive CDW.
Welcome and congratulations. You've been farewelled and congratulated more than any person. I think it's probably. So I'm not sure if this is head increasing or head shrinking, but it's good to see you at a first meeting.
Just very, thank you. Just a very quick comment. So, and it's in support of what Chair said. So the formal process is that you do a draft, you send it to the board for comment. The comments come back, but that's it. That's the process. So now, legally, you can, as Chris said, you can ignore the comments, agree them, do a modification, but ultimately you just legally have to give the board an opportunity to comment, but ultimately it's your document to give to the board. So
I had hoped that was the position, but I thought it was worth clarifying that.
Yeah.
I'll just get the screens to take us to the thanks, Hannah. Really appreciate that. Page 52 it is, and which is for want of a better term, Katie referred to it as the staff comments. It incorporates the officer commentary, and I think it's a helpful document. And perhaps if we go through, so clause 3, the removal of hereafter referred to as, no reason given, plain language, agree, suggested. Any comment? Agreed. 4, clause 4, the removal of material in addition of in advance, no reason given, strengthens the committee's oversight. Any comment? Thank you. 6, this is the first of the 3 that's been identified by the chair of the board. Duration and review timeframe of SOE does not align with statutory requirements. As it happens, the wording of the draft was worded by the lawyers, and the lawyers have come back and say it's not in line with the, yeah. So I was just like, lawyers, just tell us what it is. Should be 10 years, it's got to be 10 years, which we spoke about at our last meeting, should align with the start date of the 1st of July 2027. That was the reasons provided. The commentary was that it didn't align. So the date is now the commentary, SOE to apply from the date of adoption and expire on the 30th of June 2037 includes establishment phase and at least 10 years, which is what the legislation says. By some people's calculation, that might seem like 11 years, but we are partway through a year, and for alignment purposes, the recommendation is that it be to the 30th of June 2037. Before I move to the second review issue, has anybody got a problem with that? I suggest that this is. Oh, and kia ora, Hayden. Kia ora, Hayden. Great to see you. I suggest that this is actually it's just a fine tuning of the date that we had there. I think I might have had the 1st of July. That brings it back a day. Got no problem with that. Any discussion on that? The second is that they thought to bring it into uniformity with long-term plans, etc., that a 3-year review period. My suggestion is that, and I've said to the board that this is, and they acknowledge that this is somewhat peculiar because it's the very first state of expectation. There is a lot of stuff that refers to establishment, that it makes sense that after 1 year that there be a review. My feeling is that we need to keep in there a 1-year review, and then after. My suggestion would be that a review after 1 year, and then after that, a review of not more than 3 years, which means that we can have it every year if we like, but we've got an outer limit set for us. We've not got a rigid, it will be 3 years, which implies the exclusion of our ability to review it within that 3 years, but that we retain our ability to review this after 1 year, and thereafter not more than 3 years. Any discussion? Andy?
Yeah, my notes, when I read this, I wondered about this, and I wondered whether, and I'm certainly not dying a ditch over this, but it should be included in the clause for a minimum of 10 years since the period of the last review. So, for instance, this is set almost as though there hasn't been a review at all.
Yeah.
And for instance, if you review it formally in 5 years' time, you don't want to go back to that date by inclusion of a clause relating to the period of the last review.
Look, my only hesitation with that, putting a bit of a legal hat on, is that it's much better to have a set date within it. The difficulty is that I don't want to have to rely on institutional memory to then have to go back to the document to then get a calculator out to try and figure out, well, when was the last review? Oh, it's 10 years from that. Well, it doesn't say that here, but actually don't worry about what it says here. It's actually going to be 2042 because it was the 10 years from the last one. So I agree with the sentiment. I just think the pragmatics of it, at least from my input and my suggestion as your independent chair, is it would be cleaner for it to have a set date. And that hopefully that would align with a review period anyway for it to be formally renewed. But any other discussion, Sam?
I'm with Mayor Andy. I think that creating an expectation that once you complete a review, it then has a 10-year new 10-year life cycle makes a whole lot of sense to me, because Presumably the document then gets updated with a date on the front of it that says as at this date. So
Can't we just say that within the review? When we review it, we just review it and we put a new date on it. Does it need to actually be structurally adding more wording to the clause when it actually is just incorporated in the review itself? But my hesitation is that we now have to wordsmith something here that I don't quite know whether we get it right. That's my hesitation. Smith?
Having been through this a few times with other CCOs that the city's been involved with, we should have a physical date on it. From a legal perspective, as you spoke, I get the sentiments here. Let's get the thing started in terms of the CSOE, have a date on it. We'll work our way into things after a year, and then it can be altered thereafter if that's the will of the shareholding committee. It gets a bit messy when you've got a whole lot of institutional knowledge having to be remembering things, physically changing documents when reviews are done. We don't do that with our other CCOs, so I don't know why we'd do it here.
If we agree that we want to review after 1 year, then that will be the date where it'll change on there to being 2038.
Yes, because you will physically change it then. And in terms of your review, I agree with your commentary around the 1 year because it is an establishment phase. Still a lot of nervousness about this organisation, to be really honest, in the community, and some of our colleagues around the country haven't done us any favours. So we, to have a 1 year establishment sort of review, I think protects the organisation, protects us as shareholders, and protects our communities. So I think that's a good idea, and then we can decide what happens thereafter.
Right, Katie.
I just wanted if we could get some clarity, because I think it's been quite fluid, the information over the time as to what the statutory requirement actually is for how long it should be enforced for. So is the final word on it that it has to be in for a minimum of 10 years? Is that stipulated in
The
there?
wording of the legislation is at least 10 years.
And then there is also provision for us to do reviews at any time within that.
At any time.
So there's basically a statutory requirement that it's in for 10 years no matter what, and we can review at will. I would say that I'm still really strongly in favour of having a 12-month review. Lots of reasons which I can go into, but then seemed to me that the board's point was that alignment with the water services strategy review would be the most practical thing. So perhaps after the first review is done, could we then look to make sure that whenever the next review was going to take place would be linked to when they did a water services strategy review, so that then they were in step going forward after that?
And that's why I'm going to recommend that it be out to the 30th of June 2037, but that there be a review after 1 year, and thereafter reviews of a duration not more than 3 years, which will give the discretion to when that happens to get it in lockstep with. It'll be twofold, won't it? It'll be one, when we actually need it, and two, when there's a review of the strategy. So I'm not hearing anything against. Is there support for the fact that we as a committee want a review after 1 year? Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great.
2028.
Hannah, how do you suggest that because that's fairly simple and we can wordsmith that. I just don't want to take up the time by wordsmithing it right this second. You've just done, remains at 12 months and thereafter reviews of duration onwards 3 years. Right. I won't ask for a resolution on this because I'll take it as a job lot at the end, but we're happy with that?
Can we just add that to an action list that can be
I'll add
delegated?
it to the work schedule.
Administrative level.
Great, yeah, absolutely. So we've got line of sight of it and it can be in the agenda. Okay, thank you. That takes us through onto page 54. Yes, I'm not missing anything. If I do, just sing out. And this is clause 7 and 8. The committee make explicit that the expectation from the committee is that the Central District's water satisfy all outcomes in the long term. Will allow for the challenges. Committee understands the establishment phases bring together, and then provide framing SOE that acknowledges. I don't think there's anything there is nothing there for us to. I don't think there's anything for us to do there. There's not. Correct. Footnote 7. So the action would be provide framing in SOE that acknowledges the transition period, unforeseen circumstances, but expectation of a no surprises policy. Look, I think that's already in there, isn't it? Yeah. So I'd respectfully think that we cover that off with sufficient clarity, and that there's no action needed under for that. So no action.
So we don't need to frame it.
No, we don't. 7 footnote. Remove reference to water services delivery plan will become out of date. Look, I talked to them about this, and what quite frankly I said to them, well, this was, could you adopt the lawyers? I don't know who they engaged necessarily in Simpson Greason, but it was clearly somebody who hadn't been going along the journey with this, because I said, we all know that there's quite some history. This is about the definition of the word affordability. I said, the committee has taken advice on this from Simpson Greason, that affordability, the convenient group understanding of what affordability means can be found in the water services delivery plan. And I said, I was very frank with them. I said, if you want me to go back as the independent chair and try and negotiate a new interpretation of what affordability means, you will not have an SOE for 10 years. Right? It's just not going to happen. We have actually a convenient benchmark that we can look and review in future periods, but we have all agreed in terms of the constitutional documents establishing this committee, agreed to a definition of affordability. And so my suggestion is, subject to your input, is that we retain what we've got.
Yeah.
Happy? Thank you. The board agreed with that too, by the way. They said, okay, we'll take that off. That's why Steve is, Mahari is focused on those 3. 9, addition of interpretation. I don't think anything changes with that. Any discussion? Happy? Yeah, it says the following principles are intended to guide the interpretation of the SOE. It's just for clarity of the meaning of the provision. Clause 11, replacement of the giving effect to the SOE. No reason given. Limits to fresh water only. Do not include the addition is the conclusion. Do you know what I said? I said, if I have to go, if the committee has to explain to you what the parameters are of that provision in terms of its application, then we might just have a bigger problem here. And the board said, absolutely agree. We don't think this hits the mark of what they were concerned in, and we agreed on the spot there that it was that it wasn't a recommendation that the board was gonna pursue. So unless there's any discussion about it, I suggest that they're not pursuing it in the letter, and we just take it as the current wording, not change anything. Yeah. Danielle, you're happy with that? There was a thumbs up rather than, yeah, great. 17, removal of iwi and hapu that are not yet settled. The suggested phrasing widens fairness and good faith to all groups, settled or otherwise. Look, in the discussion I had with the board, there didn't seem to be any material change as to whether that was there or not. I'm happy either way to keep it the way it is. It didn't seem that their suggestion actually changed anything. Andy?
When I read this, my note to myself was it was covered elsewhere anyway.
It is, and we've been really quite thorough on this issue. We've spent quite a bit of time in drafting the SOE and talking about, well, what is the position of iwi and hapu who are not yet settled? And for the sake of clarity, I don't mind personally that we do have a number of provisions that emphasise the point that they're to be true, to be no detriment, that it's not to be taken advantage of, that is something that that CDW be cognizant of and aware of in its discussion. And there's been absolutely no pushback here, and we've agreed that and discussed that openly, and the board certainly understood where that was coming from as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment, and I think everyone around the table is committed to that. I don't see the harm though in keeping that wording in, and I think groups like Ngāti Raukawa, Te Auki Te Tonga and Waupoko probably would prefer that. And I'm not trying to speak on Waupoko's behalf at all, but I do know that they're in a precarious position, and while the sentiment around the table is heard, it's not necessarily echoed in some of the broader legislative debate that's taking place, and I think we do need to have some reference to it. So I think it's helpful including that language as drafted.
And that also applies to Mokai Pātea, as I'm saying.
Any other discussion? Otherwise, I'll take it that we have no appetite to change that, and we're happy to leave it the way it is. Thank you. There will be a change to the. Great, thanks. It's fantastic. 35C. Now, this is the second. Sorry, it's the third of the points that Steve Mahari raised. We've covered the first in terms of the duration. So the second is that there was a concern from the legal advisors that was expressed in terms of board language, but it was the advice that the board got, that the preference was for a more moderate mana whenua engagement to ensure engagement opportunities on key projects and initiatives. So they removed effectively the word ensure, and that they would engage where appropriate. We discussed this quite a bit at the board level. I'm very mindful of the public commentary that I've at least heard once from the chair of the board about the incredible spirit and of unity and high trust model that we have, including CTW, has over a short period of time managed to facilitate. And his comments actually earlier in this week saying that these are very important documents, but he was confident that within a short period of time that the relationships and the trust and resilience and the engagement would actually very much cement the sentiment of the close working relationship that is encapsulated here. And in light of that, it is my recommendation to open it up to the floor for discussion. I'd invite you too, Chris, if you've got any comment as well. Please do.
Just a very, very brief comment at the start.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I mean, I think we're all 100% aligned in terms of the intent, in terms of where this is trying to get to, but it is actually just a simple, the basic interpretation of the clause and what that actually means. So when it starts off with the word ensure, so what does that actually mean then in terms of when the rest follows? So I guess because if for instance there's an element that iwi hapu ngā tapuai say, well, we're not really interested in being involved in that, you fill your boots, then we've failed to live up to the technical wording of the clause because we haven't ensured that it's actually happened. So really, this is just a sort of to reframe it to what we actually think, well, what we believe is what was actually intended in terms of the reason around this clause. So look, how you word that and what you want to do is up to you, of course, but the only reason this is there is just to make sure that, the wording of the SOE is sort of technically aligned with what we think, we're going to be doing. And as Chris said, one of the things that we will be doing is working directly with Ngāi Tapuai to make sure that we have 100% clarity about how the relationship engagement is going to work.
Thanks, Chris. That's really helpful. Look, I've not canvassed everybody outside of this meeting, but those who I have, it seems that those who I have spoken to are quite comfortable with the current wording. My proposal is that, and Chris's comments are helpful, but I think he hit the nail on the head to say what's intended. This is an important legal document, but if it's going to get down to the possibility of relationships falling out or the notion of some sort of litigious about any of the words in this SOE, then it'll be fill your boots, because it's actually a document that's underpinned by high trust and engagement. My proposal, subject to your discussion, is that we leave the words the way they are. open up for discussion. Katie?
I'd be very supportive of that section remaining as drafted, just in listening to our feedback from our partners. But the drafting group spent quite a lot of time on this clause in particular, and we did work on that wording quite carefully, and we had a lot of discussion. So what's in there is quite intentional. And it was also a key matter that I heard being discussed at the Ngā Tapu Waiaho workshop that they had on this, that the expectation that CDW will engage throughout the life cycle was, I thought, was the real key element, not necessarily the extent to which iwi entered into that engagement, but the attitude towards engagement was that it was not just popping up at certain points in the process, that it was an enduring engagement, not that happened from the earliest stages of a project. And that, to me, that was the intention behind that clause, was not putting the onus on CDW to make sure that iwi all engage to a certain extent, but that their mindset towards engagement was open and in proper partnership.
Thanks, Katie. Dave?
Yeah, just quickly, but it's as an observation. Earlier in today's meeting, we agreed that CDW would be having ongoing relationships and engagements with a number of parties, including Ngā Tapu Waiaho. And we've also concluded earlier that the statement of expectation is a review document of 1 year. Not a rewrite, it's a review. So let's leave the wording as it is. I agree with Katie's summation of it. Let's push on as we're going, and when we get to that review period, we can perhaps have a quick look at it and go, how's that working? Did we capture what we wanted to capture? Did that capture the intent? And if it did, if it's great. If it didn't, then let's see what is a better way to make sure we capture the intent. But the two earlier actions by this committee actually support and endorse leaving this one in and leaves it open for further discussion at a review period.
Okay, so
staying as is.
helpful. Any other commentary? Sam?
Yeah, look, I'll respectfully disagree with the previous speakers. I think in the context of RMA reform and the alignment to what we can expect to see there, that the sweet spot for me was the suggestion from staff in the final column. Because there is also an acknowledgement that the MOU that we discussed earlier in this meeting will be the mechanism by which this expectation is operationalised, and there can be some definition around identifying and articulating the expectations and how they're going to pragmatically or practically operate. So, yeah, I certainly just wanted to register, and this was discussed with our table on Wednesday, and look, I think the staff suggestion is actually the sweet spot. It also gives this committee the ability to review and the significance and engagement policy. So that's again another policy setting that that essentially this committee gets to have input into, and so that's where I sit.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Any other discussion? Danielle?
Kia ora. Just obviously been listening to the discussion. I think one thing about policies and reforms is they're driven by governments that are in power at the time. As we know, governments come and go, and when governments are in power, policy settings can change back and forth. I think Katie gave a really good submission and conveyed to the committee, you know, the level of debate in that had been had with the wordsmithing group. And I believe if the board understood the context of that statement, that actually they wouldn't have made any changes. I also support, I think it was your comment, Dave, I can't see down that end of the table, that, you know, let's test it out. We're working in a spirit of partnership and high trust. And that is a clause that we can revisit in a year's time and see how it is going. You know, it's not Ngā Tapu Wai's intention to be a barrier to the work of CDW, but we have seen over and over again where we have been missed out in the beginning of a life cycle and we've been brought in at the end. And, right from day one in terms of CDW, we've been on a journey and the journey's been honourable. So on behalf of Ngā Tapu Waiohau, our recommendation is to leave the clause unchanged. Kia ora.
Mayor Andy.
I would leave as drafted. What will happen in reality is varying understandings of what actually engagement is, at what level it plays out, and this is based on trust. So when CDW engages with a company that can provide a resource, whether it's in billing or something like that, that's company business. And I think that's the way that it will play out. And I think we leave, I can't see this being one other than one that's based on trust rather than a legal definition of each individual word.
Thanks, Mayor Andy. Look, unless there's any other discussion, I
Can
will
I just make one more comment?
Yeah, sorry, Katie. Sorry.
I just wanted to say that Sam, I just see where you're coming from, but the issue that I take with it is that the RMA reform is in operative yet, and we don't have a significant engagement policy that exists yet. So in terms of getting this document over the line, I'd feel more comfortable if we weren't if we were putting things in anticipation, if we were more dealing with what is in place and operative now. And then when we have review periods in the future and there's a different legislative framework in place, then we'd have to take that as it comes. But I'd feel a level of discomfort with anticipating that when it isn't operative at this time.
Thanks, everyone. Sam, I really respect your comments, and in light of that, I was going to take the whole lot as a job lot, but on this particular issue, I'm going to propose a motion that and then take an account of the votes in respect of the fact that it might not be universal, and we're all okay with that, and then would, irrespective of what the yes or no, then to carry on and then take the whole lot as a job lot, a lot subject to that vote. So I propose a motion that in terms of the currently numbered paragraph 30, clause 35C, that the committee the committee endorses its original, that the iwi and hapu engagement remains as drafted. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Mayor Smith. Any other discussion before I take the vote on that? A show of hands. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? I don't think that's it. Thank you, and we'll note that. Thank you, everyone. Let's continue. Clause 36. Well, this is I think the second item in Steve Mahari's letter as chair of the board. This relates to the reporting, the half-yearly reporting, and it is a slimmed down version of the recommendation that we'd made, the proposal that we'd made, and asked the board for feedback on. And so the suggestion is that there would be a number of changes throughout it. You have that with the track changes. I'm not going to go through that word by word, but I will open it up for discussion. I know that the wordsmithing group, for want of a better term, that we spent quite a bit of time on that, and Katie personally was a bit of a champion to take this away and do a huge amount of work on it, which we're incredibly grateful for. I don't think any of the feedback is a reflection of any criticism of that, but for practical effect, the recommendation is that it be slimmed down. But perhaps, Katie, if I could come to you first. I know we've spoken about this before today, but if I could come to you first as your approach to it.
I thought I might talk to 36, 37 and 38 because they're sort of a job lot. And the suggestion from the board is that they've amended 36 and then 37 and 38 would be removed. So I'm very happy with the board's suggestions to amend clause 36. I think the scope is largely the same. To me, the changes are the level to which those are, and then the level of detail which is reported and how that is structured. So if we amended clause 37, then 38 becomes redundant. So I'd be actually fine with that being removed anyway myself. But I would like to keep 37 in there because that is what I think where we really set the expectation of what we are anticipating to come to us in terms of reporting. I'd be happy to amend that to be less prescriptive because it was quite detailed in terms of we'd want a traffic light system and here's what that would mean and here's what each of those categories look like. So if we want to be less onerous for the reporting, we could dial that back a bit. So I did suggest some wording which still provided some structure for us in terms of what reporting we would want to see, but just a less onerous or prescriptive as to how that needs presented than perhaps was there originally. But I am keen that we keep it in there because we did have quite a structured suggestion for how we'd like to see the reporting come back to us. And what the board have suggested seems to me to be a bit more just like a summary or an update of here's what you need to know. And it's sort of an exception-based format rather than a structure to say, here's, they can pick and choose the things that need to come to us based on what they think needed to be brought to our attention. Whereas I think the structured approach says, these are the things we'd like to see you report on and also raise anything else that needs our attention.
Show.
Yeah. And so we can kind of track performance and trends as well, I think is makes it more structured over time so that we're getting the same reports and we can compare and contrast.
Yeah, so happy with the amendments, recommended amendments to 37. 38 in a sense becomes
redundant if we amend
redundant.
37.
You've got a form of words that you think might be helpful for 37?
Yes, so for each measure that the board have outlined in clause 36 that they should report on the current status, explanation of any material variance and planned corrective action, and whether any matter requires committee attention. So I was just trying to streamline what we'd asked for and keep the structure in there, but make it a little less prescriptive.
That's quite a bit less prescriptive, isn't it? That seems very helpful.
I was trying to enter into the spirit.
Yeah.
Compromise,
It's sort of the takeaway. It's the takeaway lines to it.
Yeah, but open to feedback on that because what's come out of that is to say we'd like a traffic light reporting. We would like detailed milestone reporting. I figure we might get that anyway through transition updates.
But we're going to leave that to the CDW and their wisdom as to how they might want to report that. It could be a good suggestion, but it's for them. So on the basis, can we just go back to that wording, or is it here? So the wording there. So as far as one of the central authors of the provision, I'll open it up for discussion for everybody else. The feeling is, Katie, if I can summarise, happy with the amendments at 36, 37 that understandably, and happy with in the spirit of the refining of it, that you have proposed for each measure in clause 36, CDW should report the current status, explanation of any material variance and planned corrective action, and whether any matter requires committee attention. My only, if I was to try and wordsmith it, was that I know that when we've talked about material variance in the past, the board, I think, or even our discussion, we took out the word material and we just had variance, which it opened it up more broadly, and I think that had received support from the board. That would be my only suggestion. And on the face of it, at least my reaction is that this is fairly standard of any reporting. It's a variance report, any corrective action, and whether any matters requires committee attention. So bring to our attention anything you think. Tell us where the variances are, and give us the current status. And if there's any variances, what's your action? This represents, in my mind, if we were look at it if we were to term budget, you would have the variance report with some notes on it, and the notes would address exactly this. Chris, you're probably mulling it over right as you're thinking there. I'll go for other comments, but if you do have anything you'd like to comment on, you're very welcome to. Any other comments from anybody around this? I'll take it as a small job lot of clauses 36 through to 38. Dave?
Just obviously any reporting to any board of any nature is going to have a variance report in it, and that's where the focus should be, because it leads you to ask the why, the what, and the where, and all the other questions that come out of it. But again, I don't think we should be, and I think, Katie, you're quite right. I don't think we should be too prescriptive at this stage as to what we want to see in those reports. Let's see the reports, and let's see when they start to come. We can say, well, actually, we'd like a little bit more detail around this, and they will develop over time as a new entity comes together. Again, I don't think it's anything that needs to get too hung up on, but certainly removal of the word material variance, because that does lead you to what's material to you may not be to variance reporting.
We don't want to tell CDW how to suck eggs, but this is fairly standard. I don't think there's any sort of surprises here. Any other discussion or comment? Really grateful for that, for your attention to that, Katie, and it's looking good. Here, Andy?
When I read this, I just thought it was over descriptive in terms of every individual thing that you can think of at the time. But the reality is, if we were struck by a major earthquake, that takes precedence over everything else.
Yeah.
It's of significance.
Yeah. I think this seems really helpful. Mayor Bernie?
Yeah, look, I'm happy with the word material being in there. I don't see any reason to go to an nth degree of expecting variance reports.
Let's just take it as it is. It's sitting there right now in front of me. So let's just take that as it is. And so on the basis, I'm not going to pass this as a resolution, but because I'll take it as a job lot at the end. But on the basis that we're happy with this, then that will be part of the job lot for the whole document. Is that okay, Hen?
Mm-hmm.
Just within the action list, you probably need to add the renumbering of all of these now.
There's actually a provision there on the thing saying everything's going to be renumbered. That's why I said at the moment that it's the clause currently numbered as, but I think that will change. As anybody who's tried to navigate around Word documents when you've got columns and what have you that are in the wrong place, and you spend an inordinate period of time just trying to get numbering right. Clauses 42 and 43. So as far as the main issues that Chair of the Board Steve Mahari raised, the three, we've covered the three. We've covered the three. Now it might be important stuff. Very happy to hear your contribution to it, but relatively speaking, it's also around material. 42, 43 will develop and publish a significance engagement policy in accordance with, and the suggestions there. My suggestions don't materially change anything. Anyone's got Katie referred to the significance and engagement policy earlier. It's an important document. CDW is going to have to go through that. It's going to have to then bring it back to us.
I thought they strengthened it because this has taken it from how we would be reviewing it to we would have approval of it. So I'm happy with that.
If anything, it's
That's what the law says.
yeah, that's what the law says. Yeah, great. 46. This is page 61. Addition of in a manner that, again, not suggesting that changes anything. If anything, it strengthens it. We happy? 47. Move credit rating clause from establishment expectations to section of enduring expectations. So it's still there. It's still there, but it's just moving it to another place, which doesn't give it the impression that it's got to be done this year. Mayor Smith, it's not going anywhere, my friend. It's not going anywhere.
It's the final word, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
it was. Yeah.
51 B, addition of connection to the network. That just, I think, connected to the network, sorry. 53A, I'm just trying to catch people's eyes if you've got something to say. Adjustment of the phrasing, again, I don't think that changes anything.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
I think that possibly a couple of track changes that weren't in that list. If I go back to the contract, to the original document, labelled as 52, which would now become 50, which would now become something else. But there's just minor changes and whether you need a catch-all that says that we accept the other track changes as they sit.
Oh,
I just
Hannah's
don't
got
want us
that.
to
So
have
the final
go back
statement of
and say this
expectation.
hasn't been picked up.
Yeah, okay. Final expectation. Does Mayor Andy, tell me if this covers it. The final expectations to be compiled according to, sorry, for the committee delegate authority of the Chief Executive of Horowhenua District Council to make minor edits as set out in section 3 in compiling the statement of final.
I just note there's a couple of these which haven't been picked up in the further analysis.
Yeah,
document.
absolutely.
I don't see it as a major, certainly.
We just give Hannah a second, who's done an outstanding job in trying to keep the track of my madness in our discussion. We really appreciate that.
I thought we used to take 2, 3, 4, 5 there. And then agree on those, then we agree with substantive.
Oh, yeah, okay. Right, that's the way it's worded, yeah. Yeah. I just was
Substantive includes all of this, so it goes across 2 days.
yeah, okay. So this is the way the resolution is worded. Can we just take the whole lot as it's just the whole lot? Because it's sort of the whole thing's sort of relatively explanatory. I think we've set it out nicely.
And all those again, number 6, which is the name. Just aware that Danielle's online.
Yeah, Danielle, I'm just going to read this out. There's a bit of wording here. Can you start? Can we go up to the top?
You've already passed number 1.
Okay, how about I read? I'll just read the whole lot so we all know where we're at. What's the wording about there?
That's just the top.
So the recommendation of the Joint Committee is Central District's Water is that 1, that clause 35C, iwi and hapu engagement remains as drafted. 2, that clause 6, the initial review period remains at 12 months and thereafter reviews of a duration not more than 3 years. Remembering the tone of this is that we've got the clean version that incorporates everything we've just gone through. Okay, so we're just sort of changing the tone a little bit as to the document that we have. So we're not approving all of those things that we've just done, but we're taking it that's already incorporated into that document. 3, that we retain clauses 7 and 8, including footnote as drafted. 4, that we retain clause 17 as drafted. 5, that the committee amends the reporting clause 37 as follows. For each measure in clause 36, CDW should report the current status, explanation of any material variance that was still there, and planned corrective action, and whether any matter requires committee attention. In 6 is that the committee adopt the statement of expectations for Central Districts Water Limited 2026 to 2037, attachment 2, with amendments to the draft as set out in attachment 3 as amended by resolutions above. 7, that the committee delegate authority to the Chief Executive of Horowhenua District Council to make minor edits as set out in section 3 and compiling the statement of expectations. That 8, that the final statement of expectations be compiled according to these instructions and following legal review provided to committee members prior to being sent to Central District's Water. I was slightly nervous about legal review because of reasons that I shall not say out loud, but I think it's been reviewed to death by the lawyers, to be honest, and they've given us relatively opaque advice at times. But can we take that out? Are we happy with that, to take that out? I don't want them to somebody with fresh eyes to come back and say, here's a whole bunch of stuff that they don't have. Yeah, I think we're good. So I'll read that final paragraph again, that the final statement of expectations, God bless lawyers, but be compiled according to these instructions and provided to committee members prior to being sent to Central District's water. Danielle, I see you have a hand up.
Oh, kia ora. Can I just clarify, is it at clause 35 or 36?
36.
It's 36, isn't
Initial
it?
35.
Okay, right.
Because we're referring back to what it was. I think within the context of the material we have here, that notwithstanding that Mayor Andy's brought up very correctly that the wording is probably going to actually change quite the numbering. Chief is not the wording. The numbering is going to change. That will need to be finagled, but we know what we've agreed today. I'm going to move that recommendation be adopted by the committee. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Marge. Second. Any final discussion? Mayor Smith?
Look, thanks, Chair. I think we've finally got there. To get three parties or the three parties in the shareholding committee and then getting the intel from the CDW board, we've done well. And remembering that this will evolve as the company and the entity gets set up, but to have quite a thorough SOE has been quite a acknowledge the wordsmithing of everybody that's had input to it, but it's quite a moment to get to this stage. Now it gives the company a basis to away they go. They can start. So well done, everybody, and it's been a relatively collegial arrangement too, which is really impressive considering we've got quite a few parties involved. So well done to everybody, and let's hope that we can continue in this vein as we go forward with the entity.
Thanks, Mayor Smith. Added slight accretion. It's even more spectacular because it's 4 parties and with CDW. So I'm hopeful that the process that we entered into has increased collegiality, has enhanced trust, and has set our company up for success. And it's something that gives them great guidance, and that the spirit of strong relationship that this committee has with the board is one that's really set off on the right footing. I haven't asked whether people are in favour of it yet, so we better not speak too soon. All those in favour of the motion of passing this as the finalisation of the SOE according to the recommendation, hands up. Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. I personally want to thank each of you for the way in which you've worked together and you've worked with me. It's really been a pleasure. The next item 9, which is the...
Just before you go through.
Sorry, Andy.
So the process here is this, we've passed it, copy gets sent for final edit, and then onto the board, and then comms will release.
It comes back to us first because there's a here that says that it's to come to the committee members before it's been given to the board. I can't remember what paragraph that was, but it was in a paragraph, wasn't it? The instructions are provided to committee members prior to be the final assembly will be compiled according to these instructions and provided to the committee members prior to being sent to central district's work. So it'll come back to the committee members first. It'll go to the board. It won't be there for any agreement or anything. It'll be for information, and then it'll go to the board. Probably the very next email, and then to the comms.
Might just be useful if there's some process in which the board could formally say, thank you. We agree. Oh, it's our document, absolutely. But
yeah, I'm not sure when the next meeting is, but I will be getting on the blower to Steve straight after this meeting. So he might be likely to say it informally, and you'll be the first to hear it afterwards. And we have a comms manager, Olivia.
I was going to say, I have.
Hello.
Good morning. I have drafted with a lot of X's based on this conversation. But my intent was to probably put a quote in any comms from the board chair as well. If you want something more formal with a photo or something like that, I'm sure we can arrange that too.
I just think it's collegial.
Yeah. Very.
Great. I'll give you a suitable quote of
I jotted down everyone's points that were going to help me.
fan bloody tastic or something like that, you know, something that's professional and appropriate in the circumstances to say that we've reached a very significant milestone. So yeah, thank you very much. That wasn't a real quote, by the way. But we'll talk afterwards. Thanks everyone. Item 9. And this is the transition update from the chief executives. So it's a pleasure to be able to welcome Dan to the table. I'll let you introduce yourself, Dan, but this is your first meeting in your new role, which I won't go to trying to explain because I think I might just slightly get the nuance of it because it's all about the nuance. I might get the nuance of it wrong, but welcome. It's really good to have you here. And I know that there might be an opportunity as well for if Chris has got any comments about this document, which is effectively 2 documents rolled into one. But my understanding is that from now on, or from after this meeting, we will have a report from you as to the transition update, but we'll also have a separate report from the newly minted chief executive of CTW as to those 2 streams now having distance. A very close relationship, but having a distance in terms of its reporting to this committee.
Thank you, Chris. We'll take some inspiration and introduce myself. Morena tātou, ko Daniel Hager hau, ke te mahi ana ahau, ki te kaunihira arohi o Horowhenua, ko ahau te timu rangapu, tuahanga hapore, me te tari kai whakahaere mātua pūtia, no tai toko ahau. So I'm the Group Manager, Infrastructure and Finance at HCC. I'm actually sitting here in an acting capacity for Monique today. Got the honour of introducing myself, as Chris has outlined, as the new council appointed transition director. So you'll see that nuance between establishment, which is getting CDW ready for day one to take ownership and management of waters moving forward. And there's an important role for council to ensure that we do everything possible to ensure that all our staff, assets and systems can be handed over. But the role of Executive Transition Director is very much focused on ensuring council have a voice and interests are looked after in the process. And you'll see a lot of collaboration between the establishment and transition teams moving forward, but 2 separate roles and responsibilities and updates. So on that note, I'll hand over to Chris to give the establishment team update. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Daniel. So probably I think that really covers one of the, probably the most significant points, and that is just basically, obviously, we're going through a bit of a transfer phase with me in my new role. I guess at the moment I'm still wearing sort of 2 hats because we still do have the role of an establishment director to basically oversee and help with the sort of day-to-day sort of leadership of the establishment function. And I think Daniel sort of explained it quite nicely. We sort of have there's a whole lot of things going on at the same time. And I guess what we've been talked about, the chief executives and myself, is how do we just rejig our structures a little bit to make sure some of the accountabilities are clear. So as Daniel said, there's sort of the transition of things out of council. There's the establishment of the new organisation. And when we look at that piece of it, there are activities that sort of help get us to day one. And then there's activities that are all about day one on. And that's sort of the way that we sort of think about the 3 streams. And so me as a chief executive, I'm trying to spend some time when I get 5 minutes piece to really think about the new organisation and how it operates going forward. We do intend to try and fill out the executive director, so the establishment role, so that just to help that team, and that basically fundamentally frees me up more to sort of think about the future. And so it's all going to be beautiful. When that's all in place, we don't know, but hopefully it's not too far away. So just want to talk about, just following on what Daniel said as well, in terms of the reporting. One of the other things we're trying to do is to create some capacity and capability within the team to really focus on the program management of everything that we're doing. So we have been spending an inordinate amount of time getting ready for governance meetings and reporting and what have you. And I guess we've been trying to do that again with sort of 5 minutes piece between all the other work that we're trying to do. So one of the things we will do is to try and really, so this is sort of creating a program management position to really take focus on the tracking, the reporting, the monitoring. And so we're doing that at the same time as well. As part of that, and I think we've done, we have absolutely been tracking all of the activities. We've got hundreds of actions and things that are going on, and that sort of key deliverables one pager is sort of the very high level view of that in terms of tracking are all the work streams on track. Within there actually are some probably it's the critical things that you have to have ready for day one. So this is when we start talking about day one readiness assessment. So what we're also putting in place is a process so that we are really focused on what are those critical things that we need for day one to make sure that we're all smiling in front of the cameras as opposed to having to answer some awkward questions. And in that, with that is also probably adding in a little bit of an external assurance process. So that's getting put in place as well. And what that will allow us to do is, and this is across the transition and establishment as well, is to be able to come and say, and this is probably more of a quarterly assessment, every quarter you're sort of saying, how are we going? And we've got some sort of external assurance around that. So it allows us to report to the board, report to the PSG, and report to this committee. So those sort of the important things going on. There's a whole lot of detail still in this pack. What I would say is that, this pack has really been sort of repurposed from other things. So it's probably not exactly ideal from this committee. So it'd be good to get some feedback in terms of what you may be looking for. But we will be transitioning away from this style of reporting to some sort of different reporting, probably more with focusing on those sort of key day one readiness things with programs, and risk around those. So that's sort of where we'll transition to. Given the timing of the next committee meeting, we won't have that in place for them because I think really papers for the next committee meeting are due in about 2 weeks. So we won't be ready. So, but I think what we'd be aiming for is certainly the following report. Subject to getting those resources in place. Rest of the report I just take as read and happy just to answer questions. Got a fair bit of the team here, so we're hopefully got all the people. If you've got some specifics you want to go through.
Thanks, Chris. Team, I'll open it up for any substantive questions of either Dan, Chris, and the team through Chris. Also, any comments about style and the way the structure of the reporting. But I will be engaging with you over the coming weeks and engaging one-on-one with Chris and the team as to what that would look like. So I'll be carrying on that discussion. Don't feel as if you need to. This is your only chance to say about how you might like the material displayed. And Chris's completely reasonable caveats there as to the timeframes in terms of the next meeting. But open it up for any, take the documents as read. Thank you to Daniel and Chris. Open it up for any discussion. Mayor Smith.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Or Chris's. So you talk about day one, and I think that's really good that you've just got that as obviously a bit of a mindset. But look, just in light of what has happened in some other areas where they were telling their shareholders they were all right, they were ready to go, and it's just been an absolute disaster. Are we going to do any testing before all that happens? And what I mean by that is, if the switch goes off from us and goes on to you on that 1 July, I'm picking you'll do some testing on billing and finance systems and obviously the comms and signalling of all of that, and your digital systems, and also just how people ring us up at the moment around issues it'll need to go to your contact centre day one, and there might even be a bit of a loose transition in those last month. But is there going to be a little bit of testing before? I've seen so many organisations just not do this. They flick over to the new system and it just doesn't go.
Yeah. So the bottom line is absolutely, and I think if you think about the digital systems that UAT, user acceptance testing, is a really critical part of the process, so that before you've accepted it, you've gone through all that testing to make sure it works. I think billing, you'd want to be, doing some runs and testing it and what have you. Yeah. So, but I think, just a reflection, I think I've talked to you in previous months about, what we'd like to do in relation to our sort of customer billing capability, and that is sort of develop it for day one, so that we're able to do that on a sort of standalone basis, and probably invest more in that than otherwise. And I think what we've seen, particularly with Te Ake Wai, I do really feel for them, and I understand why they're in that position, is because they sort of thought, look, the easy approach will be going through council, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's do a two-phase basis, do that first. And what they actually found was that ended up being massively more challenging than what they anticipated. And I think what you're seeing is to some extent anyway, a reflection of the fact that they've got quite a disaggregated billing, across 4 separate councils, 4 different sets of people take the calls. So what we're going to try and do is take the other path. We still have to make that call to make sure that we are confident that we're going to plan that will work. And I think what I've said in the past is sort of about October is when we think we need to make that call. The other thing I think is, we are looking at is, investing a bit more in that technology, so that if you think about where's the value in investing more, and that would be in your customer and billing capability, to make sure that you really hit, if you want sort of best of breed, that would be the place. Other things, you probably not so important. So certainly testing is very important. The other thing I just mentioned, Mayor Grant, is change management. So, you can do all the sort of technical, making sure things are in the box, but a big part of it is the change management, which is all about making sure your organisation is ready and that you're taking people along the journey. To that end, we have got more aggressive timeframes around, say, bringing, a senior leadership team on board, so having them all sort of stood up by sort of very early in the new year. And the idea being is that you've got the people in place who, by the time you hit 1 July, they really do have their feet under the desk. They've actually taken over and they've got it. What feedback I'm getting from other places around the country is they realised they were too, they tried to time it a little bit tighter just to potentially save themselves a bit of money. They are now regretting that move and said, what it's mean is that the new team isn't up and running. You want to have it so that by hit the start line, they're flying. So there's top of mind.
And do you, the transfer agreement with all the assets is going to be quite a detailed process. I gather it will be literally thousands of lines of where pump stations are and pipes and different things. Do you foresee any issues there, or is it just going to it's going to be what it is? It'll take a lot of time.
It's one of the things that Daniel might comment on as well. I think absolutely I see issues. It's just inevitable and it's part of the process. But the team, the three council teams, that's where it's sort of sitting predominantly at the moment, are really, really busy sort of going through, sort of creating those lists. Yeah. And I think once we have those lists, then it'll be going through and, so I think there's sort of 80%, which is, it's absolutely fine. It's pretty straightforward, but there's certainly a piece in there that you're going to have to scratch your head on.
Yeah, key part of the role around the 3 councils is to actually coordinate and share some resource council side, so we can ensure we match a program into ultimately adoption by elected members, but linking up with the CDW team. But we also see a further opportunity in cross-pollinating some of the thinking around shared services. So we are in the transition space focused on all the big ticket items like the land, the contracts and the like. But as we sort of delve deeper and we pull in all the staff, we'll start to uncover some of those more, the minor issues. We can address the rates and the billing, but there might be opportunities where council might continue to maintain the parks and, the reserves for 12 months. And so we'll start to unpack all of those opportunities as well. So there's a bit of collaboration. But yeah, a week in the role, not seen any significant risks, but yeah, definitely
I thought you'd have all the
assigning responsibility, teaming up resource council side. We see the opportunity there to ensure we meet the deadlines. And we'll communicate that certainly an update at the next meeting.
Well, yeah, Chris Daniel, I was going to say that in the committee work schedule down for the 4th of September, which is just only a couple of weeks ago, really, there's a line item that says visibility on council's draft transfer agreements. What might we expect that to look like? Is it just a verbal report such as this, or heaven forbid you're not going to be giving us all the lists of the documents themselves, but do you have a bit of an idea at this stage as to what that might helpfully look like for us? And do we have any suggestions about what that might be helpful for us? Is what we would expect?
Sure. A lot of the programming is going to need to be broken down to brief elected members. So at each individual council. So when we come back to the wider shareholding council, we'll effectively just it'll be a very brief overview of the process that we're following, timeframes, and acknowledging that there's quite a bit of work to do for each council with their iwi partners, but also with their elected members to step through some of the adoption of principles and process. So there's a little bit of work to do council side, and so the shareholding council it would probably go more of just an oversight of the process that will be followed.
My comment is that you're very mindful of it, so it doesn't really need any reminding from me. But this is a very much intensive body of work that involves intricately the councils for this shareholding committee to be able to do its job properly, and in particular mana whenua representatives. There will need to be perhaps some thought given into it as to those who are not the mana whenua representatives are not in a council. So they might not have had the luxury of having the detailed reports and timeframes and sequencing given to them. So it's not merely just, not that I was suggesting that you were saying this, Daniel, but it's not merely sort of a brief overview of what they might have already heard, because there'll be people, myself included, will be hearing it for the first time, and we might need our hands being held a little bit more through that process when you come back to this committee. But you're aware of that, and you have our faith and trust and confidence just to be able to do that in a way that is helpful to us. Katie?
No, that had been one of my questions as well, in terms of these are going to be quite technical and hefty documents, and then how that would be pitched at us so that we can get to grips with that and communicate that back to our councils as well. And I think that just my gut instinct is don't need to necessarily focus on the briefness of the process that's been followed. I'm not screaming out for more pages to read, but I can anticipate just so many questions from our colleagues about what's the process that's been followed, what have the approaches been to resolving the difficulties, or what are those kind of principles in place. And if we had that kind of information to provide assurance that those things have been thought of and that there are processes in place, that I think will help us to communicate, all of us to communicate effectively back to our councils, rather than getting into all the the technical lists and everything. But for us to have a real thorough briefing on how that's been going, I think would be helpful. That's just my 2 cents on that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Sorry, Messmer.
Just on your comms and engagement side, just a couple of things missing, and it was, I see Rotary at Levin. Did you guys do Rotary at Levin? Yeah. So I'm doing with Steve Mahari, I'm doing Rotary in Palmerston North next week. But also Andy and I are on a panel, I think, at the New Zealand Wastewater Conference, which is being held in Palmerston North next week. Is it next week?
Next week. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think Steve Mahari, and I think you're there as well, Chris, speaking.
Yeah, but yeah, Steve's speaking on Thursday, I think.
Yeah. So there's definitely, I mean, that'll get a bit of media and a bit of press, so we might want to think about how you front foot that.
Yeah. So we've got some stuff planned. I mean, Liv, do you want to talk about what you've got planned for those days?
It's more of a commercial and industry conference,
Yeah.
but they'll all be well informed people.
Yeah, we've got, well, just for the main exhibit bit, we've just got a flag and some flyers to hand out to people if they're interested in CEW, just some base level information to make sure that we're visible there. We've seen Steve's presentation. He is speaking about water reform as a whole. The key kind of points he's talked about is that the organisations possibly need to get bigger to be more effective. And then, yeah, I saw that you guys were on a panel, so that'll be good to listen to that.
I have no idea what they're going to ask us. So I'll better find out.
We're ready for anything.
Mayor Andy?
We might need some unified shirts, central district water, to be honest. I guess,
Big handshake.
yeah, exactly. I mean, as councillors, we presume absolutely that there's been sufficient discussion between the chief executives and yourself around work programs that are ongoing. I mean, the last thing we want is a dirty great big hole dug prior to transition and you saying, we're great with that, but that's not on our work program as a priority, therefore. So those operational matters, we just presume that that's all flowing as it should.
Yeah, and I think that the key governance forum for that, Andy, is the it's the PSG, so that's still going, that's still going to be, even though, things are starting to disconnect a little, the way that we keep them connected is through the PSG. So, basically Daniel and the new establishment director as well will effectively be they'll come together to report through to that group, and then I sort of go from reporting to it to be sitting on it, and that, so even though accountabilities are sort of starting to become quite separate now, it's really, really important that the program is kept together as one, so that we don't end up disconnecting it, so things get missed, so we creep it as one program, and the way that we solve any sort of conflicts or dependencies or whatever is through that forum where we're all sitting there, and the range of things we're looking at will span the whole lot, and then of course the board was still they've got a particular focus as well.
Sam?
Oh, sorry,
I'll defer to my men.
Just some general comments about the thing. I look forward to further detailed stuff because, a little bit about, I look forward to, especially around the budget, that $17.2 million. There's a lot of money, which no doubt our individual councils will be keen to understand a bit more. I suppose the further reporting will be interesting because this sort of gives the impression that everything is hunky-dory. It's just, there's no issues or challenges, or are we being a bit optimistic? And what happens when things do go to custard? Because undoubtedly they will at some stage.
Yeah.
And just in terms of elevating that sort of what that looks like.
Look, I think that's right. I mean, what you're seeing in the finance update, basically, it is basically as at the end of June, so only at the end of June, but this is what we have spent collectively. So you can see at the moment, it's not like we're pushing against budgets and what have you. So the 17 is, that is the forecast. This is actually still the only budget that we've ever had accepted. So that's why we're still working on that. But I guess, we continue to refine the program, get more clarity about the actions we need as from things like digital. It's all been based on estimates. So once we've got to the point of having contracts in front of us with vendors, that's when you really know what your numbers are going to be, and the board starts making choices about whether they're prepared to invest in something a little bit more expensive. So yeah, look, it will move, but I guess the key will be, as you said, is that we move to sort of really tracking what are those key activities, what are the risks, how are we tracking against them, and some of those key metrics and things like money. And it's just providing transparency and being able to sort of explain if things are moving, why, and what, what's the rationale behind it. Okay, thanks.
Right. Sam?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Chris, just on page 72, which is the finance update, in a couple of sections, it talks about initial thinking will be presented initial thinking will be presented in September. And I just wanted to confirm, is that presented to the board or socialised with this committee? Because, for example, under the pricing policy, it says initial thinking will be presented in September. A measure of affordability will be included at this stage. And I was just sort of curious on, so is it being presented to us, and when do we get visibility of some of that thinking and work?
Yeah, so that is presented to the board, so the board, and this is what has to be done to go into the water services strategy. So, so at the moment it's actually, for the team working up that strategy and working up the pricing policy and what have you. And I think, what we are starting to do is to test some things, with the board, So now it's not, we're not at the point where we can come and talk to you directly about exactly how that's going to work.
Yeah. That's a great example, though, of the fact that we're now just past the SOE and there is a reporting mechanism within that. The default, in my opinion, and my position, is that this committee will, in a worst case scenario, in a sense, or business as usual, we will not hear anything until that reporting mechanism kicks in. So it could be 6 months. If there is to be any engagement with us about material things such as this, that will come from the board, as advised by the chief advisor of the chief executive, and the board will come to us and say there is something that they would like to bring to our attention, whatever that may be. But the default is that the SOE then applies as to the mechanisms of reporting back. That's how I see it anyway on the fly. It's a great question, Sam.
Well, can I just elaborate? Because I totally understand what you've explained, and I just think that we need to be mindful of the steps that we need to take as council to engage with our colleagues and get direction back as shareholder representatives. And so I would hope that we wouldn't get major pieces of work or work streams landing on us with 4 or 5 days ahead of a meeting where we have to get that direction and do all that work. So that's why I was just really wanted to clarify that when we have the updates, it's that what's coming to the board and then what's coming to the shareholders committee, so that we can also just plan and schedule those check-ins with our councils around those work streams. So I hope that doesn't come as criticism.
Very well put. It comes down to the meat and potatoes of the no surprises, isn't it? Which is really underpins all of this. And that there will be some things that we're very happy to receive as the normal course of the 5-day notice or so. There will be others that we hope that our hand will be held by let's say by the board, who's the relationship we have. It's great to have Chris here, but we don't directly have a relationship with Chris now as the chief executive. We have a relationship with the board, fantastic, and these reports are great. But our engagement as to what we might need and want is going to increasingly be through Steve Mahari, the chair of the board, and the board.
Maybe I just sort of clarify some of that. So I think the key things for things like pricing and how that's going to work, it is the water services strategy. The water services strategy, like an LTP, is the key document that talks to its community about how things are going to look, what the capital program looks like, what the pricing is going to be like, what's the strategy and policies of the organisation. And we do have a process for engagement initially with the with the shareholder around that, and as Helen's the program manager for the water services strategy, and we will working up sort of a detailed timeline about how things come through, when you start seeing versions, when you start getting visibility of that. And we do that in a way that makes sure that, I guess, particularly your key advisors are going to get that information, so that by the time it hits you, you can get some, rather than just getting a big tomb to go and have a look at. But so for instance, the PSG, we use the PSG and the other council advisors. So I think we need to do it in a way that gives you information and background analysis so that you can deal with it, points out what the important things are, probably, there's analysis that'll have to happen in terms of how does this map with what the obligations that we gave the organisation through the SOE. How does it map back to what we agreed when we did the water services delivery plan? So I think some of it will end up becoming a little bit thick and fast at some points, because ultimately we need to get a document ready to then go and consult with the community on in the new year. But it is quite a lot of work for us to do, and it is, in terms of getting it through all those stages. So I think that's probably the key mechanism for things like that. Outside of that, say, doing a transition report and doing an establishment report is more about trying to, this is why we've got to get the detail right, giving you confidence as we go along to help with, that sort of no surprises. How's the program tracking towards those things? I don't think we really will be sort of bringing things like to say, oh, can you give us some input on our pricing, policy? I think that will be done through the water services strategy. That's with the board at the moment. That's their job. So there'll be a bit of two sort of stage reporting, the formal stuff for the strategy, but also the monthly stuff, which is just helping you understand, are we actually tracking? Are we on, are we going to get that to you on time? Are we heading towards day one? Does that make sense?
And Sam, as your independent chair, and this is not just to you, but to the whole committee, up until today, the tasks that have been on the table of the committee have been fairly regimented. There's some big things still coming down the line, but we don't necessarily hold the reins on those. In my mind, my role as the independent chair transitions now much more away from getting set things across the line to actually playing a Manaaki role of the information and the relationships that Chris has just alluded to ensure, because I've heard loud and clear about the no surprises, is that we don't want big things. We want to be able to signal those and have that in a practical way that's manageable by CDW, but is also of help to us. We're probably not always going to get that right, but that's what I am acutely aware of, that my role sort of in a sense transitions to ensuring that this committee is comfortable with the information, the timing of the information, the level of the information, the caliber of the information that comes to it.
Yeah.
Katie?
Thank you. I just had a question on the affordability measure as well, that would be developed, and just wondering, because we have a measure of affordability at the moment in the water services delivery plan that we've sort of just endorsed in the SOE as well. It's like 1.7 to 2.8% of the median household income. So I just wondered, is that the baseline that we'd be starting from and starting to develop it, or do we start from scratch?
Yeah.
So that is baseline.
So yes, that is the intention. So we're absolutely knowing what the statement of expectation is then going away and making sure we understand across our area what that measure currently is in terms of our rates, what it's planned to be, and making sure we can report and come back to and report on, can we meet that given the water services strategy, what are some of the bounds that looks like, and making sure we're ready for that conversation with you.
So that could potentially be updated as the
It may be,
process goes
and I
on.
know it's a measure that's been set through the statement of expectations, and this process is really just to understand what is it now, because those expectations have been met without the understanding of what the water services strategy looks like. And so we're just making sure we can understand what that may look like given different pricing scenarios. So when we come back through the water services strategy, we're ready for that conversation.
Right. Thank you. And does the Commerce Commission regulations have any intersection with that, given that they had sort of their own?
They don't have a specific measure. And when you look at the likes of, for example, the water care, their measure of affordability is quite different to some of the other water entities. And so we wanted to make sure there was an understanding of what's happening across the country, and then also what does that look like for Central District Water.
Right. Thank you. And then a little bit further, sorry, can I ask one more?
Yeah.
A little bit further down on page 78 talked about one of the issues or challenges was reporting to the DIA the differences between the water services strategy and the water services delivery plan. And I just wondered, was that one of those kinds of things that might be showing up as a difference, or were there other things?
It's really as we've formed the water services strategy and the systems around it, and we're doing well in terms of the first cut of that at the moment and going through error checking and things, is as we've set up the water services strategy, we've imported all of each council's long-term plan budgets and the water service delivery plan budget so that we can at any point do a direct comparison between what was in the water service delivery plan and what does the water services strategy say, so that given the whole budget at any point and in any cut of it, we can always help to explain why there may be a difference between what the water service delivery plan said and what is now being proposed in the water services strategy.
Presumably they would be accepting that there's likely to be some difference.
It's just assuming it may be the case.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Great, thank you.
One of the things is once you get past sort of a year in, from the sort of central government perspective, they think the water services delivery plan is basically irrelevant.
I mean, from a joint customer's perspective, the ultimate affordability is the combination of the two rates of your bill and our rate bill. And the earlier that we can understand where that's going to sit, the better, because that's what we will be held out on to.
And we're absolutely tracking along to be able to do that. And the expectation is that we would want to be able to do that across the three council groups as well.
And look, hindsight's a great thing, but if you look at the RQY and say, what was their opportunity? So I have a place in Wellington. I got my water bill one Wednesday, and then of course the fight started. A week later, I got my rates bill. That was at the time I could sit down and look at the two and then refer back to my last one and say, oh, yep, nothing to see here, actually. And I think those sort of lessons, and because you're right, I think, one of the things is, to Mayor Grant's sort of comment about, being able to test this early and getting it out so that we can look at maybe doing some things that would help, their communities understand what they've got and how it relates. And, because a lot of people I talked to thought this was just something completely new. It was on top of everything else. And how am I going to find this money? So I think this is our biggest challenge, for engagement with the community is so that, look, we can't avoid that some people are still going to be surprised, but we've got enough people who understand, oh yeah, this is what I expected. Oh, good. No terrible surprises, but
Likewise, pain is our gain.
Yeah, and I thank them profusely for that. I'm glad it's not me.
Yeah, unfortunate, but some really valuable lessons there, and it looks like the team's picking those up. Any other questions? Yes, mate.
Just on that, I mean, our friends in Wellington, the bills were exceptionally bigger, from what I understand.
Yeah.
I mean, they may not be a cup of tea.
Yeah, well, no, I think that was Wellington. My one I'm talking about is Wellington, and it was, I think collectively it was about an 8% increase, which was about what I expected. So, I don't, I think
That's
there's been.
what's been reported.
Well, that's my experience. That's my personal experience. There, it was.
They're talking up to 100% increase in some places.
And, yeah.
One
So,
guy
I mean,
who
it's-
was 6,000.
Yeah, so it sort of depends, and it depends. But like I say, I think the vast majority, they could have had some anomalies and what have you, and people not understanding why they might have got a bill for their car park, and again, because they're, which on one level makes perfect sense because, basically they're still using capital value as the basis for a lot of the billing, and so that if you anyway, but.
I suppose it just highlights that we need oversight over that as soon as possible. Because we will get judged as Mayor Andy says. They'll go district council, city council bill, and the water's taken out of that, and then the CDW bill, and they're hoping that it's going to be very similar to what they previously had.
I understand. Yeah.
We do have a detailed model, which is all of our councils, every property across the CDW area, which is all three councils. And we're using that for our pricing for last year's rates. We're also doing it again for this year's rates. And with the CFO group, we're all working together so that once we do our water services strategy and the councils go through their long-term plan budgets, that we'll be able to do a direct comparison between the combination of the two rates and what was previous.
The question for this committee is to the extent to which, at any time that we get to see that. I'm not proposing that we make that decision now, but we've heard loud and clear that not only councils need to be looped into that discussion, but this committee is a separate entity from the councils also, and we've got an SOE, and we're just going to have to work through what that might look like in terms of the regular reporting, because for very obvious reasons, this committee is going to want for that to be a no surprises as well.
Yeah. But it's always going to be the anomalies that get reported. And the reality is every time we go out and strike a rate with the Rangitikei District Council, somebody will find a circumstance where my rates have gone up by 45%.
Yeah.
For some reason.
There will be the odd one. And look, and it's not going to be easy because we do want to move towards harmonisation, and we've got to make some decisions about how, so if you went to the harmonisation on day one, then you're going to have lots of swings, right? I mean, we know we want. I hear you. I guess, for me, and the board hasn't made a decision, so this is just sort of some random comments at the moment. But if you think about it, I think what you would want to do is to say, what would be your objective for the first bill? And the one would be that, you've established it, people understand it, maybe there's some movement in there, but it doesn't sort of create a massive, we don't want to lose all of our support from our community on day one. Then we'll need to think about, okay, well, if we do need to transition and we've got some big projects to pay for, and we know that we've got to, that's going to have a change. So this is all the things that I think you're going to put into the mix for your pricing strategy to say, come up with a, pricing strategy that manages all of those competing objectives and comes up with one that we think is a good balance. And I think the most important thing will be, because again, going back to Te Akiwai as your example, what we saw was mayors and chairmen basically throwing rocks at each other in the media. So we've, and it's the point that you made earlier, Chair, that is, we've got to manage all that, do the no surprises, make sure that what we want is that if we are having to deal with some issues, we've got a group of mayors who are actually supporting that and helping to explain it, as opposed to feeling like they've got to distance themselves from it. So the only way we do that is sort of go on the journey together a bit.
Thank you.
And just adding to who's going on that journey, I think a critical element is the social democracy in this kind of story, and making sure that our comms are efficiently resourced so that we can bring our whole community together for this, because change is hard.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think we all. Sorry.
So I was just going to say, day one will be about service delivery. It won't be about the bill, because the bill won't come for a couple of months later. So if they see a change in service delivery, that'll be the prompt for the criticism, and any the next one will be the bill.
Yeah. Anomalies become the reality in the public eye's mind that we have to live with. Harmonisation, at least as far as the three areas of the service area, is ring fenced and specifically provided for and catered for within the constitutional documents of this committee. And Hayden's point, it all comes down to the social and political licence that we actually rest upon for the legitimacy of us being able to do our jobs and to having the trust and confidence in our communities. All of that accumulates on some broad shoulders. And those broad shoulders are not just merely Chris's and not merely Daniel's, but they're all of ours. And so we are into this together, and the no surprises is where the rubber meets the road, and that's how we're going to ensure that we can all keep each other abreast of the things that we need to know for us to get through what is some very concerted and hard work being done by a lot of people. So thank you very, very much. The recommendation is to receive the transition update from the Chief Executives presented today on the 14th of August. I move that. Do I have a seconder? Thanks, Katie. All those in favour? Carried. That's accepted. It's received. I'll get the word right. The final item, ladies and gentlemen, before we break for Kai, actually, TK has very kindly is going to provide lunch, which is fantastic. So if you're able to stay, we would greatly welcome that. And before we close in a karakia, our last item is item 10, which is the committee work schedule. It's got some track changes on there. And I think that part and parcel of that visibility we probably can expect that over the coming months, we might even have some more detail in the work schedule as part and parcel of just making sure that everybody is kept on track as to what's coming around the corner. As leaders, I always say one of the greatest attributes, if not the greatest attribute of any leader, is the ability to be able to, with some certainty, see in the future. And that's getting increasingly difficult and increasingly chaotic in the world that we live. But we do that on behalf of our communities to ensure that actually we can pivot rather than actually have to lurch one way or the other as we're hit by surprises constantly. And that's what good planning is about, and good foresight of the systems and processes that we have in place. And part of that is our work schedule. Is there any comments about the work schedule that we have in front of us, Katie?
I just had a question about on the next meeting on 4th of September, there's the opportunity to comment on the significance and engagement policy. But it was just clarified earlier that the law requires us to approve that. So is that a second step that's happening further down in the work schedule? And this is just the interim first look?
Yeah, Hannah, I'm right in saying that it's not part and parcel of the water services strategy, which we do get a line of sight before Christmas, I think, is when we get the draft coming to us. It might be before the end of January. When are you thinking that we can see that? I know it's not quite the question answered, but it's actually, it'll take, it is a...
Yes, so the significant engagement policy, yes, you need to have some input. We are required to engage with the community. So there's various pieces. So I think what we would be doing is, so the overall plan would be we're engaging with the chief executives and the council staff just to basically make sure it's in the right, and Ngā Tapu Aho as well, to make sure it's sort of in the right, we've got the right things. We would then, I think the plan is we would then bring it here, once we've got some board approval. So we've got a very initial draft going to the board for approval to actually then go and start that engagement. But we need to do community engagement, and then after that, I think then we say, rightio, we've got a community engagement. This is what they said. Here's their recommendation on the final thing. You get to sign it off then, and that's why there's the engage and then approve.
At the moment, we've got it on our work schedule that we're going to have a look. We're going to be able to comment on that on the 4th of September.
Yeah, that's yeah.
I also think I'm not quite sure what our reasoning is, and it might be for an off the record conversation after the meeting closes, why we don't have anything for October or November. I think that might have been wishful thinking, unless you guys all go away somewhere.
Well, this is kind of my points about the visibility of the pricing and stuff, is that if we're getting in December a draft water services strategy that's already got baked in high level forecasting assumptions and some of those key kind of things around pricing strategies and other those components that will kind of set the whole direction for it, it's almost too late. It kind of puts a lot of, because if at that point you say, well, actually, we don't like one of these fundamental pillars that underpins the strategy, then you're essentially saying, well, no to the water services strategy, or you're creating a risk that you're quite criticism of the whole strategy as a whole. Whereas actually there feels like just me, like just knowing, going through a long-term plan process, there's like an interim step that feels where it would be a kind of a check-in with the direction of travel. So it's not, that's just, I don't know.
I suppose what I'm hearing is a couple of things, and I think this is a work in progress. One is a reminder that we're not the board, so a lot of that, and so we have a particular, so it's not to take away from any of your points. But second of all, is that I think I'll get advice on that and engage with you sort of offline, but not that I want to add to anybody's workload. But I could imagine that there might be things that we don't cover off on the 4th of September that require an October and perhaps a November meeting. So we'll try and get that into your diaries as quickly as possible, because I can see that there's a momentum of work that we might need to be involved in one way or the other.
Yeah. So as I said, working up a timetable around, trying to sort of work out all, it's quite the dance in terms of getting things, input at various stages and what have you. But certainly water services strategy was intended to come to you in November. So that would go out, we'd be, and there's quite a bit of time. So we would be looking for sort of final sign of a pretty advanced sort of consultation draft by the board, sort of late in December, sort of last opportunity in December. So there would certainly be, the board would have something would have a view. We want to come and do that engagement here and give you some, basically briefing of what's coming in. So we've got time for feedback before it then goes out. Just on the water service strategy, so you do get to engage on it, but it's a bit different than, say, the statement of expectation. So you don't get to approve it, but you do get to provide feedback on it. But of course, you've already set us our expectations through the statement of expectations. So what you want to be able to see is there anything in here that is what we think is inconsistent with what we've said in our statement of expectations. So that's how the two things fit in.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, thank you. On the basis of this is a movable feast, I do have a recommendation here that the Joint Shareholders Committee receive its work schedule dated the 14th of August. I will move. Do I have a seconder for that, Katie? Amir Bernie has a couple of comments as I've moved or seconded anything. Any other comments about it? All those in favour? Carried. Team, I've failed you because it's 12 and it's meant to finish at 12. But I think the conversation has been very helpful and constructive. We do have some kai here for lunch provided. Marge, I wonder if you'd join me up the front to say the closing karakia together. We'll put it up on the screen for everybody. But seeing that you and I did a team effort with the opening, I wonder if is it right? Sorry. Yeah, and following that, then we might have because I noticed the kai's actually arrived, so we might follow from this straight through into a blessing of the kai. Would you? Is that okay? So perhaps all of us together. Puta. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you very much. And if we could, if we can get the leaders from Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you can join us for lunch.
I hope you do a photo op because you've just made history passing the SOE.
You're not here though, Don.
Well, that's all right. And we got to make another bit of history is we actually got a vote on the shareholders committee before it got taken away from us. Lucky te.
Thank you, Danielle. Sorry you can't be here to join us.